everyone, welcome to part 2 in my series on how to prepare for a KRAV MAGA grading. What we're looking at this week is the technical consideration in training, and what this means is the actual KRAV MAGA techniques themselves. This is the most important consideration, and the reason being is because when you're going into a grading, what you're being tested on is your ability to perform the techniques to the standard required. Now, your strength, your mental focus, your conditioning, your mobility, all of those things are still important, but they shine through your ability to perform the techniques. They are shown through your performance of the KRAV MAGA techniques, so it's really important to have this down pat. The technical side of KRAV MAGA is made up of your combatives, self-defense, fighting, and third-party protection. Chances are you would have trained each of these in classes and with your instructors, so I'm not going to go through how we can train those because you've likely been exposed to the different methods. But what I will go through is my top tips for training leading up for a grading. The first is make it a priority. Like I said in my last video, every week we should be setting aside time for training. Now, the technical consideration should be taking up the majority of that time, and I'm talking about 60 to 80% of that time. So if I have 10 hours allotted per week, 6 to 8 of that should be dedicated to technical training. The second is go slow. A common mistake is that people try and rush the techniques and do them with speed and power, and that's alright, there's a time and place for that, but it's really important to go slow and make sure you're nailing the technique perfectly. Even if you've been doing the technique for a while and you're quite high up, it's really important to revisit that slow training and make sure you have it correct, and make sure you're reinforcing those good patterns in your brain. The third is be supervised. As much as possible, get to a class or get under the supervision of someone more experienced and more knowledgeable than you. That way you're receiving feedback on your training. Unfortunately, we can't watch ourselves train. Yes, you can set up a camera, but you're never going to get the feedback from a third party who's done it, who's been there before. You really need that supervision there for your training. Number 4 is be consistent. Like with all training, you need to be consistent to improve. And I found with the technical side of KRAV MAGA, doing something daily really helps. Whether it's just 10 minutes of dry drilling at the start or the end of the day, it really contributes to becoming better and more proficient. Number 5, be realistic. And what I mean by this is make sure your training time is being used wisely. So what I see a lot of is people going for a certain grade, ignore the lower levels, and expect that they're going to remember it from their last grading. They figure, oh, I've done that before, there's no need to put too much time and effort into it. That's not realistic. When you go into a grading, you're being tested on everything. So it pays to be able to devote time to the stuff you've already been tested on. So if you're going for P5, devote time for P1 to P4. It's not realistic to devote time only to the P5 grading. The other thing is devote time to all the techniques, not just the sexy ones. So what I see a lot of is leading up to a grading or just before a grading, people will be hammering down the gun defenses or the knife defenses, which is fine, but you need to be giving time also to the bear hugs, the punch defenses, the prevention techniques, headlock releases, everything. When you look at the KRAV MAGA syllabus, from P1 to G5, there's 140, 150 gradable techniques. Of that, gun defenses make maybe 4 or 5. That's 2-3%. You really shouldn't be spending 90% of your time on something that makes up 3% of your grading. Number 6, be mindful. And this is most important for solo training. So when you're doing some dry drilling, hitting the heavy bag, or some shadow boxing, be mindful, don't get lazy. Remember to move and scan at the end of techniques. Remember to keep your hands up, to keep your footwork nice and light and mobile. Don't be lazy just because you don't have a partner there. Okay, now that we've gone through the top tips, what I'm going to go through is how to incorporate this into your actual grading preparation. So first of all, as time goes on, as we get closer to the grading, our intensity and volume of Krav Maga training should go up. So what I mean by volume is you're simply going to be doing more training in the technical consideration as you get closer to the grading. So if I was doing 6 out of 10 hours 6 months out, as I get 1 month out, it should be 8 out of 10 hours. If you have to replace other aspects of training, that's fine, but that's your call to make. Intensity should also increase as time goes on and you get closer to the grading. What I mean by that is if I'm 3 months out and I'm doing 50% of my techniques fast, 50% slow, perhaps when I get to 1 month out, it might be 80% fast, 20% slow. That way, I'm slowly developing that speed and explosiveness, but I'm also not compromising the slow training, which is important for developing and refining the techniques. So how my training is structured. I can't get to classes during the week simply because there's none around me. If there were, trust me, I'd be there as much as possible. But what I do is I do a lot of dry drilling during the week with partner training on the weekend. So Monday, for example, I'll choose something from the P1 syllabus and something from the G1 syllabus, and I'll spend 10 to 20 minutes on each. Tuesday will be the same, but P2 and G2, so on and so on. When it gets to the weekend, I'll be training with my partners and I'll be training for 2 to 4 hours, and that's a lot less planned on what I'm actually training. I might look at something that didn't feel right during the week or something I haven't touched on in a while, and I'll focus that in my partner training. But the main focus there is that I'm being consistent. Every day it's something. I don't want to leave a massive gap of no training because it is a perishable skill, and if you leave it for too long, you will lose it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. What we're looking at next week is the physical consideration, so your strength, conditioning, and mobility. Thanks for watching.